Today we continue to look at the season of creation as we come to remember the World Environmental Day, which takes place on the 5th of this month. In Genesis 2, God puts Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden to take care of it. Then sin enters into the Garden of Eden. The devil tempts them to take the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And 3 relationships were broken down because of their disobedience. Their relationship with God, their relationship with each other, and finally, one of the relationships we don't often realize and see, their relationship with the land. Whereas before they walked and talked with God, now they hide from Him in fear and shame. Whereas they were in harmony with each other, they walked naked, now they hid their sexuality in shame, and soon violence entered this dysfunctional family. And now their relationship with the land is destroyed. Whereas before they ate freely of the good fruit and vegetables and drank pure water. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat of it. It will produce thorns and thistles. We do not treat the land as part of God's creation. To care for and to nurture it. When we create piles of waste, we are not being good stewards. Our waste pollutes water, the land, and kills animals, fish and birds. Part of the dart projector. Roll the slide up top there. Carry on. Sorry. I never got to speak to Sandra. Sorry. Next one. During the sermon, you will see that there will be a slideshow going on around about plastic and about that. And so we'll see that many animals are killed through that of pollution. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 8 deaths globally is caused by air pollution. The Gauteng province is one of the worst air pollution levels in the world. One of the things that Pretoria is well known for is the fact that we actually have the stillest air in the world. In other words, we don't have winds. And anybody that grew up in Pretoria enjoys the windless city because we're not used to wind. We get cranky when the wind blows. It's one of the things we don't like about when we leave Pretoria. And yet one of the problems is that the air remains still and pollution pollutes the air instead of blowing it away. But that blowing away is nothing but dispersing what is already there. We ourselves need to be far more aware of what we have. We see in the parable of the tenants that we read today that not only did God ask for His due from those tenants, but He also asked them to look after that which He had. And so what happens is God creates and gives them this place to look after, and they abuse it. They kill those that come to it, and they take it for granted. I'm pretty positive that if Jesus came back to earth today, one of the most critical things He would talk about is how we have destroyed God's creation and how we have neglected to look after that we have been given. What we have not done in place of what we should have done. You and I are both asked to look after God's creation, as we read in both Genesis and in the Acts passage. And yet we turn away from that and we become almost like a dictator, where we decide that we'll just take and use and abuse instead of actually using things for God's good and glory. You and I are both guilty of that. Maybe it's just through our silence. Maybe we're doing our little bit. But maybe the challenge is that we ourselves need to be more active in what we do. I want to ask a question. I know people don't like that in church. We shouldn't ask questions. So I'm asking for an answer from you. What is the first characteristic that we read about God in the Bible? Damn, I should have sent all the children out before. What's the first characteristic? What does God do? The first thing in the Bible. He creates. And so it is that God bestows upon each of us the ability to be creative, to create. And I'm pleased that you answered the way you answered. Because if there was a bunch of children that were seated here and I asked that question, they would immediately come with an answer. They would not have been frightened that if they said the wrong thing. But we are frightened and fearful that we may say the wrong thing. It is so important to see that we are given that ability to be creative. And so as you say to a 6-year-old, if you say to a 6-year-old, can you sing? The first thing they do is they burst out in song and they sing. They don't say yes or no, they just sing. But if I ask you, can you sing? Well, unless you've been professionally trained, no, you can't. Because we are frightened that we may fail. We're frightened that we may not succeed. And so it is too that we have been given God's creation to use it creatively. Not to abuse it, but to be creative in it. How you and I are to look at it. If somebody made a beautiful painting, or if your child came home from school and gave you their artwork, you hang it in a place of pride. I always see it when I go visit all these pictures on the fridges and every other way places. Or we make scrapbooks and we put it in there. We don't go around and destroy it. We treasure it. And so why are we doing that to God? Why do we take His beautiful creation, His beautiful piece of art, and we destroy it? Why do we make sure that we do things not the right way? And so, what is there for us to do? We need to behave differently. We need to relook at our lifestyle. And you may feel at the present moment, feel a little bit guilty. You may feel that maybe we should do something differently. But we should not seek to live lightly out of duty, fear, or guilt, but out of love. Love for our neighbor, love for our fellow creatures, love for future generations, those that are not with us at the moment, that are next door. We should love them to make sure that they too have this beautiful creation to look at. At the end of the 7:30 service, one of the parishioners, an older member of the parish, left the service, and she said to me, "You know, I am a pre-plastic child. I never had plastic when I grew up." And look what we have here today. I think the irony of what we have here today is, if I to tell you that this is only 4 families, one day's plastic. 4 families, one day plastic. One of the people who brought the plastic to me, said to me, "Are we going to have an audit on what we're wasting?" And I said, "No, but we are having an audit on what we're wasting. Because this is one day of 4 people." We drive and we see these fences of plastic bags like we have strung up here. And we're horrified and we look at it and we say, "But what are we doing about it?" They should look after their place that they stay. And yet, if you just take a short trip out into Brooklyn, I'm not going to talk about Hatfield, but you go into Brooklyn, one of the pristine suburbs of Pretoria that much is thrown at it. Resources are thrown at it. We are embarrassed about the pollution that lies around it. The amount of plastic that the laborers take out of the water drain system. Hatfield and Hillcrest is a different option because we have 40 employed people that daily do their rounds in the area and picks up waste. And I know what you say, well, at least they're getting work and they are being paid for it. But should we do that? Should we not ourselves be looking after what we have, what God has given us? Should we not have a pride in the creation that we have, in what is given us? Why is it that we don't take action? We don't follow the command that God gave us, the first of all the commands. Look after my creation. Instead, we take it, abuse it, and don't use it. There's a beautiful flower arrangement over there, and I want to thank Jan for that wonderful flower arrangement. Very artistic, very creative. That flower arrangement is made with plastic straws. Do you know that it takes 10 seconds to unwrap a plastic straw? 10 minutes to use a plastic straw. But 1,000 years for a plastic straw to biodegrade. Why is it that we feel the need to abuse things like that? We ourselves need to be far more involved in God's creation. We need to be quirky. We need to remember that today's crazy idea is often tomorrow's prophetic action. I was speaking to somebody on Friday, and he came up with something which was like sort of, oh, come on, don't be stupid, it will never work. You know what, you've had that? And what his idea was, why don't we take a big container ship that has no top on it, and we drive it out into the middle of the ocean where we have these massive storms, fill it up with water and bring it back into Cape Town, and we've got plenty of water to use for everyone. And you and I go, oh, come on, it won't work. The seawater will get in, or this will happen. But why don't we just think out of the box? Allow ourselves to be creative in looking at responses to what we have. the challenges that we have. When I was working at Woolworths, our kiddies' clothing department sales were going down. And we did an in-depth study on why that was. And so Woolworths made a decision to make a lower quality clothing and to charge a lower price. And the reason being was because nobody was prepared to hand the clothing down from one generation to the next anymore. Because fashion had to be part of it. Why is it that every year we need to go out and buy a new outfit, a new wardrobe, so that we are looking more fashionable? Instead of having 3 buttons, today we only have 1 button on a jacket. Why is it that we have to disperse of all those wonderful bits of clothing that we have to re-look at what we are? And I can see all the men smugly looking at their wives going, Men, why do you need a new car every 3 years? It becomes important that we ourselves start realizing where we are at the present moment in the society we live in. In a world where plastic bottles clog up the pristine beaches, where dyes are simply poured into the nearest river after the proceeds of dyeing has been completed, where mountains are being built with the waste that is generated from human habitation, at some point the question has to be asked, is this what God intended? And if the answer is no, then we are dealing with sin. We are being sinful in how we are looking after God's creation. Tshwane at the present moment has 2 working landfills, one in Mamelodi and one out in Pretoria North. Those are the only 2 landfills that we have. Knysna doesn't have a landfill. They have to travel all their waste from Knysna to George to dispose of it. There are no plans to build another landfill in Pretoria or in Tshwane because there is nowhere to do it. We have run out of space. So what is there for you and me? What is left for you and me to do? How can we be more responsible with our waste? And that brings us to the 4 R's. The first is reduce. Instead of going to the shopping stores every single time and buying a new bag and getting a cheap bag. I was watching a lovely video of a guy that he's now through to the finals in Britain's Got Talent, and he sang a beautiful song about a bag for life. It's one of those, those canvas bags. He bought a bag for life. And he said there, why is it that every time you take one of these bags, these cheapos, and you walk with it, what are you frightened that's going to happen with the handles? And he was singing the song, and everybody in the whole audience said, snap. It's so true. That's all we expect. You expect the bag to break on you. You expect the fear that something that you put in is going to fall out of it. I can be critical of my old company because I can. Do you know why a Checkers bag is called a Checkers bag? Because they were the first company in South Africa to have plastic. Up until that stage, remember the old OK Bazaar's paper bags? pick and pay paper bags. Checkers came with the first plastic bags. Why is it that we allow ourselves just to accept? Why did we reduce the use of what we ourselves use and our waste? Why did we look at ways of reducing in our lifestyle? We've spoken about fashion and motor cars and other things like that. The second R is reuse. Why did we reuse the food that's left over, put it aside, heat it up, have it for another meal? If you really can't bring yourself doing that, share it with somebody that is in need. Why can't we reuse a bottle that we have? Why can't we reuse that we are given? In other words, if we buy a bag for life, that we reuse it on an ongoing basis. That it doesn't just fill up in the kitchen cupboard. You know that kitchen cupboard you've got for the plastic bags? What about recycle? Why is it that we're comfortable of just throwing everything out altogether? Why don't we break it down into the smaller spheres of what we have? Why do we separate our waste and take that which is organic and use it in compost and put it back into the land that we have? We'd be surprised at how much less waste we'll actually have. How much less we are sending to the landfills and how much more we'll be actually sending to be reused. And the last, but the new one, the one that's important also, refuse. Why don't we refuse the bag at the till point? Why did we refuse to buy the goods that are over-wrapped instead of under-wrapped? You'll notice that many of your takeaway places are doing away with polystyrene, plastic. They're all going to paper. But the paper's no good if we just take it and throw it away back in the landfill. Yes, it does biodegrade over a shorter period of time. And so what are we left with? The challenge that we are left with is, how do we re-look at becoming better stewards of God's creation? How is it that you and I re-look at what we do with our waste? How is it that you and I re-look at what we ourselves are putting back into the landfill? How do we become better stewards to the creation that is around us, to the beauty pristine that God has given you and me? What are we to do?